Jennifer was born on the 27th of September, 1968 in New York City, the long-awaited daughter of Gloria and James Farber. Her parents were respected people in the business community. Her father was successfully engaged in investments, and her mother devoted herself to philanthropy. In an atmosphere of love and care, Jennifer received an excellent education and learned important family principles: honesty, respect, and desire to help others. From childhood, she was drawn to literature, art, and theater. She loved to write short stories, compose poems, and later found herself blogging, sharing her thoughts on family, parenting, and the beauty of everyday life. Her texts attracted readers with their sincerity, gentle humor, and ability to convey a special charm, even in the most ordinary moments. Upon entering Brown University, she chose English literature and drama. Jennifer passionately analyzed classic works, participated in student theatrical productions, and dreamed of one day writing a book. After graduation, she found herself in the publishing industry, where she edited manuscripts and helped authors perfect their texts. Colleagues appreciated her fine sense of language and her ability to bring text to life, making them more expressive and profound. But the most important thing in her life was always her family. Meeting Fotus Dulos was life-changing for Jennifer. He was a charismatic, ambitious, and energetic man who literally dazzled her with his passion for life and determination. Fotus was born in Greece, but for the sake of education, he moved to the United States, where he graduated from Columbia University. He later built a successful career in the construction business, creating luxury homes with sophisticated architecture. His designs embodied not only style, but also his commitment to excellence. They married in 2004, becoming a beautiful couple in which each complemented the other. Fotus was a determined and visionary entrepreneur, and Jennifer was a sensitive and creative individual. They shared a belief in love, support, and a strong family. Their dream came true. Children's voices were heard in their home. 5 children were born to them. The Dulos family nest in New Canaan was a place of warmth, comfort, and children's laughter. They strived to create a space where everyone felt happy and secure. Jennifer devoted herself completely to the children, filling their childhoods with care and tenderness. She told them stories before bedtime, arranged cozy evenings, organized holidays, taught them to see magic in everyday moments. They spent weekends together, picnics, bike rides, walks in the park. Music was always playing in their home, filling it with an atmosphere of joy and inspiration. Fotus, passionate about his architectural projects, continued to build his career, but his family always remained his priority. He wanted his children to be proud of him and tried to be an example and a reliable support for them. In New Canaan, Connecticut, the morning of Friday, May 24, 2019, seemed the same as hundreds before it. This small town with spacious homes and verdant parks was known for its safety and measured pace of life. The Dulos family was no exception. 5 children woke up in their own home, and their mother, Jennifer Dulos, filled the morning with warmth and care, as always. Jennifer loved to create comfort. That day, as always, she made breakfast, helped the children get dressed, and checked their backpacks before school. Despite the chilly May morning, the atmosphere in the house was warm. Soon she drove the children to school, and before they got out of the car with a smile, she told them the words they heard every morning: "See you tonight, sweethearts. I love you." Surveillance cameras near the school captured her car at 8:05 a.m. She was returning to her home at 69 Wells Lane, where she lived with her children after splitting from her ex-husband. Jennifer parked, went inside the house, and from that point on, her trail went cold. The first hours after returning home didn't stand out in any way. No one she knew noticed anything strange. Everything went on as usual. Jennifer was an organized person, kept her life under control, and her days were scheduled to the minute. But closer to noon, strange things started to happen. She didn't show up for important meetings with her lawyers or meet with friends as she had planned. It wasn't like her. Even more disturbing, she stopped answering her cell phone. She never just disappeared, her loved ones recalled. She always gave advance warning if things didn't go according to plan. The biggest worry, however, was when she didn't show up at school to pick up her children. This was the moment when anxiety turned to fear. When evening came and still no word from her, Jennifer's friends decided to take action. They called the police around 7 p.m. to report that she was out of contact and had not come to pick up the children. The police response was swift. Jennifer Dulos was a well-known woman in town. a loving mother and an active member of the community. Her sudden disappearance seemed strange. Jennifer Dulos' spacious and bright home greeted the police officers with silence. Daylight streamed through the large windows, but there was a sense of ease inside. The front door was locked, but the key was in place, allowing the officers to get inside without difficulty. At first glance, there was nothing to indicate trouble. There was a mug of unfinished coffee in the kitchen, a fresh newspaper lying nearby, and her phone on the table. It seemed as if the landlady had stepped out for a few minutes, but she was nowhere to be found. Inspecting the house, the officers reached the garage, and it was there that the first disturbing discovery awaited them. In the seemingly ordinary-looking room where tools and household supplies were stored, dark stains were visible on the concrete floor. An examination showed that it was blood, and later, forensics confirmed it was Jennifer's. But even more disturbing was another fact. Someone had traced the marks. The smeared stains indicated an attempt to clean the floor, but the signs of a struggle could not be hidden. While the forensics team was examining the garage, the investigation team began searching for Jennifer's car. Already on the night of May 25, it was found 3 miles from the house. The black Chevrolet Suburban had been left on the street in a quiet neighborhood where Jennifer had never parked. There were no signs of a struggle inside, but the car's very location raised questions. Who had brought it here, and why? By morning, it was clear that Jennifer wasn't just missing, she was a victim of violence. The traces of blood in the garage, the attempt to cover them up, and the movement of the car suggested that her disappearance was no accident. But the most disturbing conclusion investigators came to was simple. Jennifer's body could never be found. Jennifer Dulos' disappearance raised police suspicions about her ex-husband, Fotus Dulos, from the very beginning. There was no doubt among the woman's close friends and family. If anyone could pose a threat to her, it was him. On the surface, their family seemed prosperous. A successful business, 5 children, a cozy home. But the reality hidden behind closed doors was different. Years of conflict, manipulation, and fear made divorce for Jennifer not just a legal procedure, but a struggle for survival. The breakup came in 2017 when she found out that Fotus had another woman, Michelle Troconis, with whom he had a relationship even before the marriage was officially over. However, for Jennifer, it was not only a betrayal but also the realization that her safety was at risk. She knew what her ex-husband was capable of and openly expressed her concerns. In one court document, she wrote, "I fear for my life. He told me that if I left, I would feel bad. I don't believe he will leave me alone." After the divorce, her behavior changed. Those who had known her before as a cheerful, confident woman began to notice anxiety in her. She avoided meeting with Fotus, preferring to communicate through lawyers. More and more often, she spoke of feeling watched. The lights in her house were on at night. The curtains were always closed. She repeatedly told friends, "I don't know how he'll do it, but he'll find a way to hurt me." Fotus made no secret of his irritation and frustration that his ex-wife was demanding full custody of the children. In conversations with friends and acquaintances, he consistently portrayed himself as a victim of circumstance, claiming that the court system was unfair to him. According to him, Jennifer deliberately manipulated the situation to turn the children against him, and it was this that made him feel alone and abused. At public events, Fotus tried to create the image of an innocent victim subjected to the arbitrary system, showing his vulnerability and emotional suffering. However, in private conversations, his true face was more vivid. Behind the outer mask of calmness, there was obvious aggression and irritation, which only emphasized the depth of his inner crisis. The situation was aggravated not only emotionally, but also legally. He was threatened with a court decision that could deprive him not only of the opportunity to see his children, but also to lose influence in society, destroy his reputation, and deprive him of control over his own life. These threats did not go unnoticed by Jennifer, who sensed that the situation was becoming dangerous for her as well. A few days before her disappearance, she had shared with a close friend her innermost fears and anxieties about the future, sensing that if nothing changed, she and her children would be in danger. Jennifer felt this threat. In the days before her disappearance, she shared her fears with a friend, and then, on May 24, 2019, she was gone. When police announced Jennifer was missing, Fotus's reaction caused considerable surprise to investigators and others. Instead of immediately calling her or trying to find out where she was, he showed utter indifference, Even for the sake of the children, about whom his concern could have been expected, Fotus made no move to make contact or find out her whereabouts. When notified of the incident, he expressed no emotion, which only increased suspicion of his behavior. However, the most striking fact was that soon surveillance cameras recorded Fotus in the company of Michelle Troconis as they threw away garbage bags in different parts of the city. These recordings became a key element in the investigation. The police conducted a search which revealed bags containing various items such as sponges, towels, and clothing. When analyzed in detail, it turned out that all these things were soaked in blood, the examination of which confirmed it was Jennifer's blood. A legitimate question arose. If he was not involved, why did he try to get rid of the evidence? Investigators gradually reconstructed a possible scheme of events based on the found evidence and witness testimony. According to the information received, Jennifer returned home immediately after taking the children to school. It was during this period that a violent altercation took place in her garage. Traces of blood found at the scene clearly indicated that during the struggle, Jennifer had received several severe blows. Apparently, someone had tried to erase the marks of violence, but despite the measures taken, some of the evidence remained undisputed and allowed experts to draw important conclusions about the nature of the incident. The body was then apparently forcibly moved from the scene, and Jennifer's vehicle was left in an area where she had never parked. This illogical placement of the vehicle raised further questions for the investigation and indicated that the perpetrators sought to maximize confusion about what had happened by deliberately creating false traces. Fotus, who was also suspected of involvement in the case, has consistently denied involvement. He insisted that he was at home at the time of the incident. However, the analysis of his cell phone data refuted his words. It turned out that he was moving between different locations during the day, which strongly contradicts the claimed version. Under the pressure of facts and evidence, Fotus put forward an unexpected hypothesis. He suggested that Jennifer could have staged her disappearance. According to him, she was allegedly inspired by the plot of Gillian Flynn's novel Disappeared, where the protagonist organizes a fake disappearance to frame her husband. However, the police had serious and solid evidence to disprove Fotus's version of events. The blood found in the house, his ambiguous movements on the day of the disappearance, and the discovered attempts to destroy evidence indicated that the crime had been carefully planned. Every detail, from the location of the car to blood residue on household items, indicated that the perpetrators acted in an organized manner, seeking to confuse the investigation and leave as little real evidence as possible. Now experts continue to analyze the collected data, trying to understand the entire chain of events that led to the tragedy and to establish whether there were other accomplices in this case. Police scrutinized surveillance footage, phone calls, and financial transactions to find out who else might have been involved. Another suspect, Kent Mountini, came to light. His behavior, contradictory statements, and attempts to avoid responsibility only served to strengthen suspicions. Kent Mountini, attorney and longtime friend of Fotus, at first glance did not seem to have a direct connection to Jennifer's disappearance. However, it turns out that a month before she went missing, he had been helping Fotus work out legal schemes that could protect him from future trouble with the law. He contacted Fotus several times on the day of her disappearance, but later claimed they were random calls. When investigators examined his phone records, it turned out that he had been in contact with Fotus far more often during critical hours than he admitted. Under initial questioning, Kent denied knowing anything about what had happened. But then, when confronted with the evidence, he changed his testimony, saying that he had guessed about Fotus's plans but did not want to interfere. His attempts to evade responsibility looked as unconvincing as Michelle's excuses. Investigators demolished the defense's version of events step by step. Cameras captured Fotus and Michelle throwing away evidence, and phone records showed that Kent was in constant contact with Fotus at a critical moment. When it became clear that the evidence was irrefutable, both began to cooperate with the investigation, but their versions differed. Michelle claimed she didn't know, and Kent said he just didn't want to pry. By this point, their words no longer mattered. The investigation proved Jennifer was not just disappeared. She was the victim of a carefully planned crime, in which Fotus Dulos was not the only participant. Fotus Dulos has always sought to control his life. In the eyes of others, he was a successful real estate developer, owner of a company that built luxury homes, a man used to living well and making important decisions. He gave the impression of a confident, ambitious man who always gets his way. But since May 2019, his life began to crumble. The disappearance of his ex-wife Jennifer turned him from a respected businessman into the prime suspect in a case that drew national attention. Since Jennifer's disappearance, he has been desperate to convince those around him of his innocence. He has given interviews insisting that he is being persecuted, that the police are unfairly biased against him, that he is just an unhappy father trying to rebuild his life. He claimed that his ex-wife could have run away on her own, gone into hiding, faked her disappearance. But the police already knew the truth. They had gathered enough evidence to shatter all his excuses. Everything pointed to his involvement. For months, he tried to confuse the investigation, to hide evidence, to change versions. But in January 2020, he had nowhere else to go. In early January 2020, police formally charged Fotus with first-degree murder and kidnapping. This meant he was now one step away from a life sentence. He was arrested and sent to jail, but was soon out on bail. The court ordered him to be under house arrest, to wear an electronic bracelet, and to comply with strict conditions until his trial began. Fotus tried to remain outwardly calm, but those around him could see he was on edge. He realized that there was little chance of justifying himself. Despite all his attempts to portray himself as a victim of the judicial system, public opinion and justice were going against him. Fotus was not a man who could accept defeat. He wasn't going to sit in jail, he wasn't going to show up in a courtroom in front of a jury and hear the charges that would ruin his life forever. On the 28th of January, 2020, he was scheduled to appear in court. That hearing was going to be crucial. The judges would determine whether he would remain free on bail until a full trial could begin or be immediately incarcerated. For him, it was the moment of truth. On the morning of the 28th of January, police officers arrived at his home in Farmington, Connecticut to take him to court. He knew about it in advance, but when the officers arrived at the door, no one opened it. He didn't answer his cell phone. Suspecting trouble, police entered the house. Inside, everything looked surprisingly calm. There were no signs of struggle, disorder, or hurry. It looked as if the owner had just stepped out for a while. But when they got to the garage, a frightening discovery awaited them. Fotus was sitting in his automobile, unconscious. The car's cabin was filled with carbon monoxide. He had connected a hose to the exhaust pipe and had closed the windows and doors. He chose suicide over a trial. Police officers immediately called an ambulance. Medics who arrived on the scene were able to resuscitate him, but his condition was critical. He was taken to a hospital in New York where he remained in a coma for several days, hooked up to life support machines. However, the brain damage proved to be irreversible. On the 30th of January 2020, Fotus Dulos passed away. After his death, police discovered a suicide note left on his desk. In this last message, he again denied his guilt. He wrote that he had not killed Jennifer, that he had been victimized by the court system and the press, that he had been unfairly made guilty. I did not kill Jennifer. I had nothing to do with her disappearance. Everything that's been going on the last few months is a witch hunt. I can't live with it anymore. Those words didn't sound convincing. He could argue all he wanted that he was being persecuted unfairly, but the investigation had already proven otherwise. Even before he died, he hadn't confessed what he'd done. He hadn't repented. He hadn't told them where Jennifer's body was. He chose to walk away rather than face the consequences of his actions. After his death, the case didn't end. Now all the attention of the investigation turned to his accomplices, who could no longer count on his defense. Michelle Troconis, his mistress, who had helped him dispose of evidence, and Kent Mountini, a lawyer who investigators believed knew about the crime and helped Fotus cover up his tracks, were left to face the charges alone. Fotus might have hoped that his death would ruin the case, that without him the police would not be able to follow through. But he was wrong. The investigators continued their work, seeking not only justice but also to establish all the details of the crime. The most frightening conclusion, which remained unchanged even after Fotus's death, was simple. Jennifer's body was never found. The police and loved ones continued to search. But every day the chances of finding her alive or at least returning any remains to her family became less and less. Her relatives did not give up hope. They wanted to get not only justice but also the truth, to know what happened that day, where she was, what she had been through. But the main person who could have told them this was gone, leaving no answers. As Fotus Dulos sat in his garage inhaling deadly carbon monoxide, his accomplices could no longer hope to escape. On the same day, the 28th of January, 2020, when police found him unconscious, arrests were made of people who, according to investigators, helped him cover up the crime. Investigators were not going to stop the investigation. On the contrary, events developed with even greater speed. The first person arrested that day was Michelle Troconis. The second person arrested that day was Kent Douglas Mahoney. Michelle Troconis, his mistress, was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, but for a long time she claimed she didn't know what she was doing. Kent Douglas Mahoney, his friend and former attorney, was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Michelle Troconis was released on bail and was scheduled to appear in court again on the 6th of August 2020, where she was to be formally arraigned. Unlike her, Mahoney was initially held in custody. The court set bail at $2 million, but the amount was later reduced to $246,000, and he was released in October 2020. Following these arrests, Jennifer's family issued a public statement. There was no satisfaction or sense of closure in it, only pain and an abiding realization of loss. While we are relieved that the wait for these charges to be filed is over, there is no sense of closure for us. Nothing can bring Jennifer back. We miss her every day and will always mourn her loss. Fotus's death didn't mean the end of the case. He may have hoped that his suicide would put an end to it, that the police would stop looking and his accomplices could get away with it. But the opposite had happened. All eyes were now on Troconis and Mahoney, who would have to answer for their part in the case. They could no longer count on Fotus, who had tried to protect them and take the blame. It was now up to the jury to decide their fate. The case of Jennifer Dulos became one of the most resonant tragedies that exposed the dark side of family conflicts and the power of manipulation. Fotus Dulos tried to avoid responsibility to the last, but the evidence against him was too strong. His suicide was not an admission of guilt, but neither did it prove innocence, only left more unanswered questions. For her family and loved ones, this case can't be over until they have answers. Although justice has caught up with the guilty, the main mystery of this story remains unsolved. However, the hardest part of this story was the fate of Jennifer and Fotus's 5 children. Having lost first their mother and then their father, they were left in the care of Gloria Farber, Jennifer's mother. The court awarded full custody to her, denying the Dulos family any rights to contact with them. The children moved to her home in New York City, where the grandmother endeavored to create a safe and stable environment for them. This tragedy left an indelible mark on their lives. They lost both parents, became involved in a high-profile criminal case, and witnessed court proceedings that only confirmed a terrible reality. Although justice has caught up with the perpetrators, there will never be a complete closure to this story for Jennifer's family, for her body has never been found.